Welcome to Education Matters, presented by the Public School Forum of North Carolina. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Ann Wolf. On today's episode, we're exploring the value of partnerships between rural schools and local businesses and how these collaborations can strengthen both education and community. We're joined by two community school coordinators and the president of Wilson Chamber of Commerce to discuss the impact of these vital connections. We are so pleased to be joined by Ryan Simons, president of the Wilson County Chamber of Commerce, Krystle Lindsay, Community Schools Coordinator at Clark Elementary School and Vance County Schools, and Hipp Barclift, Associate Director of the Community Schools Coordinators in Elizabeth City Pasquotank Schools. Welcome. Krystle and Hipp, I'd love to start with both of you and just hear a little bit about some of the unique challenges that our rural schools are facing. And Krystle, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Hipp.
Of course. I think one of the biggest challenges is support with supplies. Students need access to supplies. Teachers are having to go into their pockets to fund the supplies that's needed for the classrooms. That's one of the biggest consistencies around teachers.
I appreciate that, Krystle. Thank you so much. And I know lots of teachers feel that, so I feel like there's a lot of nodding heads to that for sure. Hipp, what do you see as some of the unique challenges facing rural schools? I know you work across several schools.
Right. I think some of the biggest challenge that I see across rural schools is providing healthcare services within the public schools, especially when it comes to physical health and as well as mental or behavioral health. That's one of the major barriers that I see right now that they're being faced with. And of course, retention of keeping teachers in the classrooms. You know, many schools are challenged with finding even subs or just filling in classrooms because of, just not a lot of people in the education pool. And then with all the rhetoric that goes on around education right now, people are leaving that. So I think it's just being able to keep those teachers in classrooms along with the health and the mental health piece.
Thank you so much. And Krystle, I see you nodding. So you're seeing a lot of those same challenges in Vance County?
Same, yes.
Okay. Ryan, I'd love to talk a little bit about why partnerships between schools and local businesses, especially in rural areas, can just be so important to serving our students.
Well, it really all comes down to scale, because rural communities, simply don't have the volume of business and industry that urban centers do. So it's imperative that both schools and businesses be intentional about working together, because there is a smaller margin of error in rural communities if either schools or businesses aren't able to align with one another. The advantage, though, that I think our rural communities have in this regard is that when those relationships are built, they tend to be pretty deep and meaningful. Educators really get to know the challenges and needs of employers, and our businesses get a deeper understanding, I think, of some of the constraints that our schools have. But when that happens, there's a real dialogue that occurs, and I think there's a pretty good likelihood that both students and employers benefit from that.
That's wonderful. And Ryan, do you have any specific examples that stand out to you from your own community where this has just been meaningful and long term?
Yeah, I mean, we can cite a number of examples. I think one of the things that Wilson has done really well is set up a platform. We call it our Wilson Education Partnership, where we have a person in place dedicated exclusively to making these connections happen. So I think that's what it has to be, is that there has to be a deliberate and intentional effort on part of both the business community as well as our public schools to make it happen. It doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen by accident. So yeah, we can point to a number of manufacturers, healthcare providers, other businesses that have a workforce development need, and they see our public schools as being a primary conduit of that workforce. So they've been very cooperative in helping make that happen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And I want to have a little bit of time for both Hipp and Krystle just to talk about the community schools model and how that actually encourages partnerships like this. So, Krystle, would you like to share what you've seen in Vance County?
Um, I think the community schools model invites businesses into the school building. So teachers and staff members are not doing this in isolation, but there's this open communication, this open dialogue. So there's a mutual relationship, and it's more than just donations. It's truly building meaningful and lasting relationships with businesses within a community.
That's wonderful. Hipp, what have you seen in Elizabeth City?
Well, what I've seen is that it encouraged long-lasting relationships and partnerships by them reaching out to the schools within the community school network. And through that, it offers internships possibly for high school students that hopefully will stay in the community and be valuable employees that stay here in Elizabeth City and not look to go elsewhere. And what I've seen is a stronger presence of CTE being offered now at the high school that is connecting with those businesses in the community, that is building strong partnerships where they can look now for employment within the school system because of the relationships that are being built. And it's building stronger capacity for keeping these students here in Elizabeth City because they do desire possibly a trade instead of a 4-year degree. So it has definitely enhanced the relationships here by being in the community school model where we're able to get out and talk about community school. And one big thing that happened here at Northeastern a couple of weeks ago was the CSC here hosted a family business expo. And from that expo, he had over 38 businesses that came out, and they actually offered on-the-job to students and parents pending final approval. So to me, that's what business relationships with community school is all about, is building capacity that lasts for lifelong to strengthen the community.
Wow, that's so exciting. Thank you so much. And Krystle, I'm curious how you've been able to identify and match the needs of your school with businesses and just appreciating that that looks different in a rural area than it might in an urban area. But I love what Ryan said, how sometimes that's a great opportunity too.
Absolutely. I think we're intentional. We're intentional in listening to our students and our families to find first, we got to identify what are the needs. What do we need to meet? And once we can identify the needs, then we can look at, businesses and see who's best to fit those needs. But then also like taking it a step further, what can we offer that business to? So it's not just we have our hand out, gimme, gimme, but let's make this a true partnership in terms of making this a two-way relationship. And then that builds that accessibility to families. We connect them to those businesses, but then we're also promoting that business in hindsight as well and saying, hey, we're going to support you and supporting us, essentially. And that's how we build accessibility and then the sustainability of it.
Thank you. And Ryan, I'm curious, just thinking you work with lots of businesses in Wilson County, how do you identify and even kind of recruit people into those relationships with schools? Like, I think you mentioned some of your messaging before just around the importance of workforce, and I think we can all learn a little bit by hearing you share how you approach that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that an altruistic message is as compelling as it used to be anymore. You can't tug at the heartstrings and expect businesses to respond as forcefully as they might have done so in the past. I do think you have to make a business case for it. And right now, the business case is, you know, employers need employees, and the most sufficient pipeline of those employees are our public schools, and they're the ones that are preparing our workforce. So I think there's a logical connection to be made between businesses and schools. And I think if whether it's a chamber of commerce or an economic development organization or the schools themselves, I think it's going to be making that business case that makes it attractive for employers and businesses to kind of take on the inherent risks that are associated with partnering with schools, and there is some risk associated with it. You do have to devote some resources of your business to building these relationships, which might otherwise be directed to something that's more immediately profitable. But it is a long-term investment, and I think a compelling case can be made for it.
Thank you so much. After the break, we'll continue our conversation. Welcome back. We are so pleased to be joined by Ryan Simons, President of Wilson Chamber of Commerce, Krystle Lindsay, Community Schools Coordinator at Clark Elementary School in Vance County Schools, and Hipp Barclift, Associate Director of the Community Schools Coordinators in Elizabeth City Pasquotank Schools. One of the things we know from some polling we did of voters across North Carolina last year is that people want our children to be prepared to be successful in life. That is the top one, right? When we go back, and they do really appreciate CTE and other areas too. And I wonder, Hipp, if you have some examples of how that extensive business involvement you just shared with us has made an impact on your schools, but also on specific students.
Well, I can speak for here at Northeastern. I know the nursing program, I think last year only had like 3 or 4 students. But through the partnerships of working with Centera, our local hospital, I think those numbers have now gone up to somewhere in the 15 to 20 range. So
Wow.
therefore, that nursing pocket is definitely going to be something that expand the students to be able to go into the nursing program at COA. And also, I know there's other CTE programs that are starting to really take off because people are now becoming more intentional with career ready preparation for the student base and going out into the communities to try to find those partnerships to support all the CTE initiatives. So that's what I've seen going on here in the district, especially at the high school, and then even in the middle school, they're starting there to talk about career ready and partner with the local Coast Guard base to take students out. I think it's 10 or 15 at a time. They go out. They're sponsored through ECSU. They're able to actually fly the planes there at the Coast Guard base. So we're very paying attention to the career ready path and making a lot of concerted efforts to make sure we're addressing those and listening to what the students' needs are in putting those programs in place.
And I love Hipp too. You're talking about where there's jobs where people can stay in rural areas, which we know is such a priority for rural areas too, right? That kids can have us if they want to stay in that area, they can.
Yes, yes.
Wow, that's wonderful. Krystle, I wonder if you have examples of how some of these partnerships have enhanced student outcomes. Knowing you're in an elementary school, so a little different than what Hipp was sharing, and yet
Right.
very important too.
Right. There are a lot of different examples that I can utilize. We partner with a local church where the pastor and some members come once a week to provide teachers with a bathroom break. And this helps to set up students for success because it sends a message that the adults in the adults in the building matter too. And when we take care of our teachers, they in turn do a better job of taking care of our students, but also students get that chance to meet with community members that they normally wouldn't meet on a regular basis. So we're trying to think outside the box in terms of providing support, but also providing opportunities for our students. Another partnership, our local barbershop, they joined us for our back to school bash in August. And we wanted it to be more sustainable than just a one-time event. So the owner of that barbershop said we can create vouchers. We give families that need it throughout the year a voucher. They can call him and get a complimentary haircut at any time throughout the year. But he's also coming back to assist us with a mentoring program that we're going to start next year. So there's a lot of things, and it's also about utilizing people's talents, seeing where the needs are, and then putting people in the best spaces.
Wow, that's wonderful. Ryan, I was curious to hear when you all think about public schools and you think about attracting and keeping businesses in your community. I know we've talked a lot about workforce. Are there other roles that strong public schools play when you think about your community?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is it's an element of our quality of life, right? So, employers are recruiting employees to their business, and of course, we want them to consider graduates of our schools first. But those workers that they're importing into our community, they have families, right? They have kids that attend our public schools. So it is absolutely a recruitment tool for us that we want to make sure that we have high quality education options that exist in our community. And so that's a selling point for us. So it's imperative that we support schools not just as these producers of a workforce pipeline, but it's a quality of life amenity and a piece of infrastructure that people expect to have anywhere where they want to live and do business. They're just as important, if not more important, than high quality roads and broadband infrastructure and water and sewer. We got to support our schools on both ends of the spectrum, both as a producer of workforce, but also as an amenity that improves our quality of life as well.
Well, thank you. And I wonder, Hipp, given your experience, if you want to share a little bit about just the benefit of public schools in your rural community.
Well, the benefit of public schools in our rural community, it gives everyone an opportunity to be educated. That you know, it don't matter what race, creed, or color, you have an opportunity to attend public education, which is free. And also, I feel that public education is definitely caring about the whole child and trying to promote the whole child. And they're also concerned about community. And I feel that as a product of public schools, I'm a big advocate that public schools stand and continue to stand in the future for educating our kids.
Thank you so much. Well, I would love to have each of you share what advice you have for small business owners who want to get involved, but maybe don't quite know what to do. And in reality, it could be small business owners or even large businesses that sometimes it just feels hard to figure out because you've all talked about some matchmaking here, right? And understanding talents and understanding needs. So, Krystle, I'd love to start with you for what advice you have out there for businesses.
Just be open to the conversation. I think it starts there. You can get a lot accomplished with a simple conversation, just to know and meet expectations. I think once you create that mutual benefit, everything else can kind of align and fall right into place where it should be. But then also, I would encourage them to create like multiple check-ins just to make sure that that partnership is still feasible, that it's working, that it's growing in the right direction.
And I liked what you said, not just once a year, right? But
Right.
something that really is ongoing. Ryan, what advice do you have?
So I'd say two things. First of all, it's like any relationship. It takes work and it takes effort from both parties. Both schools and businesses have a responsibility to reach out to one another and not just expect the other party's going to initiate it, right? Secondly, I'd say that outreach needs to be careful not to be an imposition. Both schools and businesses have self-serving reasons why a partnership would be beneficial to them. But it'd be a mistake to assume that one end of the relationship is more important than the other. So schools and businesses need to go into partnership with an acknowledgement that neither is truly going to know what the other is contending with. So the most successful partnerships I've seen between schools and businesses, they go ahead and they accept that right off the bat, and instead of seeing barriers as some thing that can't be overcome, they look at it as an opportunity to be creative and come up with innovative solutions, and they're proactive about working around problems that are inevitable.
Thank you. And Hipp, what advice do you have?
What advice I give, and I take this from example from myself, is getting connected with our local chamber of commerce has helped us to build those relationships with the community partners. And I say that because monthly the community chamber of commerce hosts business after hours. That's where I would attend every one of those and just showing a face and just meeting people, collaborating, and then inviting them into the space of community school and giving them a little small synopsis of what community school was all about. And then we had a handout that I would give them with brief information about the community school model and what it was all about. And then just following up with people as they exchange business cards, just following up. And by seeing them month to month at those chamber events, it built relationships. And I say that because that's how we were able to build a relationship with Centera, our local hospital, that now we'll be having telehealth launching in September. And it came by way of going to the Chamber of Commerce business after hours, and with me connecting with hospital personnel monthly, seeing each other in different spaces across the community that built those relationships, and they came aware of more of what the community school was all about. But the main thing is inviting them to the space and seeing what each entity needs from each other.
Well, I have to say, I was on a school board for 4 years and I did a lot of partnering with our local chamber of commerce. So, Ryan, I know you didn't ask us all to say that, but we're just speaking truth.
That was music to my ears. I loved hearing that.
And I do just want to thank all of you for being here and the work you're doing every single day in your communities and in your schools. And it's phenomenal to hear how the community schools model is already doing more to bring together business and schools, and also just the role that each of you play and the role local chambers play. So to me, the advice out of all this is don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, say, I want to get involved, even if you don't quite know what that's going to look like. I feel like our schools will definitely help you figure that out. So thank you so much for being here. I'm really
Thank you.
appreciative for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After the break, this week's final word. In rural communities like the many we have here in North Carolina, local public schools are often community hubs, serving as places of learning as well as connection and growth. Likewise, local businesses are important pieces of what makes a rural community what it is, making relationships between the two not just beneficial, but essential. When partnerships can be fostered between local businesses and schools, the entire community benefits as students gain access to new resources and opportunities, educators receive vital support, and businesses become more deeply connected to the future of their communities. These partnerships can take many forms, whether it's through providing financial resources, volunteering time and expertise, or helping to meet the basic needs of students and their families. Local businesses are uniquely positioned to make a real difference. By identifying needs and stepping in to address them, businesses can improve the educational experience for students while strengthening the local connection that makes our rural communities so special. These collaborations are particularly important given the unique challenges rural communities face. With limited access to resources and gaps that urban areas may not experience, rural schools may have to turn to the community to fill critical needs, but they also provide a great contribution. Strong local public schools play a vital role in ensuring that rural communities are able to thrive by preparing kids for life, strengthening the local workforce, and helping maintain a sense of community pride and identity. Without well-resourced local public schools, the long-term success and sustainability of rural areas would be at risk. Unfortunately, the funding gap between the wealthiest and least wealthy districts has been persistently growing in recent years. As a result, there are often significant disparities in the abilities of counties with different levels of wealth to provide their schools with the resources they need, particularly given the increasing role of local spending over time. This is despite the fact that lower wealth counties tax themselves at higher rates than wealthier counties, but are still unable to generate comparable tax revenue to wealthier counties that make less taxing effort. The disparity will sadly only be exacerbated with the loss of federal education funding. We've already seen rural districts abruptly lose funding being used for school construction projects and teacher recruitment during an ongoing shortage of qualified teachers. Because of those losses that will inevitably hurt students, the need for public schools to receive support from within their communities is especially important at this moment. Everyone has a role to play in supporting local public schools. Local businesses have the power to make a tangible impact on the lives of students by helping schools prepare those students for life. Schools, in turn, provide businesses with a way to invest in their community's future while cultivating the next generation of leaders, innovators, and workers. As we look ahead, it's clear that these collaborations will only become more important. The challenges facing rural schools are real, but so are the opportunities for communities to come together and create meaningful change. The future of rural communities depends on all of us working together. By fostering and strengthening these partnerships, we can ensure that every student, no matter where they live, has the support and resources they need to thrive. As Governor Stein reminded us during this year's North Carolina Rural Summit, our state's path to success runs right through rural North Carolina. That path is paved, first and foremost, by our public schools. Thank you for taking time with us to learn and think about education. That's all for today, and we'll see you next week.